I'm back in the USA and back in the dive locker. Malta was amazing. Did some serious learning over there, and now it's time for me to share with you my key takeaways from Rebreather Forum 4. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Divers Ready. My name's James. As always, fantastic to see all of your smiling faces. Malta was absolutely incredible. I hope you guys really enjoyed last week's video where I took you diving in Malta and showed you some of the incredible World War I wrecks. If you haven't seen that video already, I'll link it up above there. It was absolutely a great time. It was fantastic. It didn't even feel like work. It was great to catch up with friends, old and new. And look, I can't possibly cram all of the 3-day conference of learnings into this video. There was a lot of information presented. So on the plane ride back over the Atlantic, I reflected on my notes and made 5 bullet points of my biggest learnings, which I'm going to share with you in this video. 1. The size of the CCR industry is really unknown. There were 2 separate presentations that tried to gauge the size of the rebreather industry, but both presentations were kind of inconclusive. First off, Frauke Tillmans from DAM presented data she had collated on rebreather sales from a myriad of manufacturers to help gauge the size of the CCR market, and then compared these sales numbers to numbers of near misses and fatalities in terms of accident analysis. I absolutely congratulate Frauke wholeheartedly on her efforts to get these manufacturers to open their proverbial kimonos, but the data is problematic. Frauke will be the first to tell you. Firstly, not all CCR manufacturers submitted their numbers, so the data on sales is incomplete there. Plus, there's no data whatsoever on the murky world of second-hand CCR sales. Frauke's presentation was particularly gut-wrenching when she got to the part on CCR fatalities over the past decade or so, because you're sitting there in the audience with a bunch of rebreather divers looking at a bar graph, and I'm sitting there like, yep, 2018, 3 of those were my friends. 2019, yep, 2 of those were my friends. Absolutely brutal. We also had a presentation from Sean Harrison from TDI, who has championed the collection of certification numbers from multiple, but not all, CCR certification agencies, to kind of get a sense of the number of CCR divers out there by certification level. But again, the data was incomplete and does not take into account divers who may have trained on multiple units or gained certificates from different agencies on the same unit. So we really don't know reliably the size, but it was a good indication and a really, really good effort to get the agencies to anonymously share their certification numbers, which hasn't really been done that much before. I went to RF4 as a CCR instructor candidate to get a sense of what the size of the CCR industry is like, and whilst I heard some good guesses, I'm really not any more the wiser. Key learning number 2, CO2 retention. Everybody talks about scrubber breakthrough, meaning making sure that scrubbers are well packed, making sure that you don't overbreathe your scrubber, making sure that you don't keep your scrubber past its duration date. No one is talking about hypoventilation. We had a fantastic talk from John Clark about scrubber duration, conditions and the causes of breakthroughs, that is CO2 leaching through spent absorbent material, and the takeaway from that was your scrubber duration may be much shorter than the manufacturer says based on a bunch of personal factors. So don't be cheap with your sorb and don't push it to its maximum stack time. Be very conservative. But one consideration that hadn't really rolled around my brain pan previously was presented by Dr. Simon Mitchell. Hypoventilation. In other words, not breathing enough. Too slow, too shallow, too low of a rate of breathing. When you're operating a CCR, you are the pump. Your lungs are pumping and causing the circulation of gas. And whilst you never want to overbreathe your unit, hyperventilate and produce more CO2 than your sorb can handle, you also don't want to retain CO2 in your bloodstream and tissues by underbreathing. Key learning number 3. There is no direct correlation between the amount of bubbles in your blood and instance of DCS. Personal Doppler monitoring devices that detect bubbles in the bloodstream post-dive have been trending a lot recently. I have had many requests to review these products, and I have held off for one simple reason. The science isn't there yet. Dr. David Dulett from NEDU presented on the topic of venous gas emboli, VGE, and studies that he and others have completed on the correlation between the grade of bubbles, 1 being occasional bubbles and 4 being your blood is basically champagne, and in the instance of decompression sickness. Now, long story short, there is no correlation. The studies that have been conducted over hundreds of dives found no direct correlation. In other words, divers could have DCS with very low grade VGE, or have high grade VGE, lots of bubbles in the blood, and have no DCS. Take from that what you want, but for me it tells me that Doppler science is not really a reliable tool to gauge how safe of a diver you are. Checklists, 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 checklists. Okay, this is not something I learned at RF4, of course, as much as something that was reinforced in my mind. Checklists are never optional. I always have and I always will build my rebreather using the manufacturer's checklist, and I will never get in the water without completing the pre-flight checklist. These are promises that I've made to myself. What I need to guard against in order to keep that promise is complacency. I can never think, oh, I'm good enough to not need a checklist anymore. Fatal mistake. Checklists every single time. Everybody who came to the stage with any kind of presentation on safety reinforced and nailed home the importance of the use of checklists. If you're a CCR diver and watching this, please promise me that you're using your checklists. Gag straps are a divisive subject. The subject of gag strap usage in rebreather diving was a hot topic, with no clear winners on either side of the argument. In our swag bags, as participants of RF4, we were actually given a gag strap, and the question came up, well, are we actually going to use it? Is this a good gag strap or not? And then the coffee break following Pete Mesley's talk on bailout strategies and the use of gag straps was abuzz with the pros and cons. Do you use one? Should we all be using them? There didn't seem to be any clear consensus, but a mouthpiece restraining strap, and I'm sorry if you don't know what a gag strap is, it's a device that's designed to provide a seal around a diver's mouth and keep the mouthpiece in place in the event that the diver should go unconscious in the water, undoubtedly helps in some situations, but is also a hindrance in others. So there was no clear consensus among the myriad of rebreather divers that I talked to as to gag strap usage. The jury is still out. If you want more than just my 5 biggest learnings from RF4, the organisers will of course be publishing the full recordings of all presentations, and you can read the firebomb of a question that I asked the head of 3 major training agencies, a question that was simultaneously booed and cheered in those published recordings. Of course, I will share the published recordings, the report from RF4, on our social media once available. I would like to take this opportunity as well to say a massive thank you and congratulations to Michael Menduno and his entire team for running a seamless, fantastic forum that was heavy on the education and not short on the entertainment either. Michael's enthusiasm for our sport is as contagious as it is refreshing. So Michael and your team, again, from me and everyone at Divers Ready, congratulations, great show, and we look forward to the next one. I'm already hoping that RF4, hopefully in 10 years' time when my liver has had chance to recover, will answer more of the questions about physiology and have more accurate reporting on the size of the industry. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always so much for watching. Put your questions in the comment section down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and share it with your rebreather buddies. I will see you in next week's video. Dive safe, dive often.